Some of the most expensive machines ever trained cost tens of billions of dollars to build. And then the companies that built them did something that looks insane. They gave them away. They published the blueprints online for anyone to download and run for free. That isn't generosity. It's one of the oldest, coldest moves in technology. When a trillion-dollar company hands you its best work for nothing, the question is never, why so kind? It's, what does free do to everyone else? Because in tech, giving something away is almost always aimed at someone. And once you see the target, you can't unsee it. By the end of this, you'll never read the words open source AI the same way again. You'll see who's really being attacked, who's getting rich off the giveaway, and why even the company that shouted loudest about OpenAI is now quietly closing the door. The move is called Commoditize your compliment. A compliment is something people buy alongside your product. Hot dogs and buns, phones and apps. And here's the rule that runs all of Silicon Valley. When the price of your compliment falls, demand for your product rises. So if you can make the thing next to your product cheap, even free, you win. Demand floods toward the side you actually sell. And quietly, a rival who lived on that exact thing gets drained dry. You're not being generous. You're starving a competitor while looking like a hero. Google gave Android away to the whole planet because more phones meant more searches, and search is where Google prints money. Microsoft helped make PCs cheap and interchangeable so the world would always need its software running on top. Netscape open-sourced its browser to sell the servers behind it. Each time a company set fire to one layer of the market to protect the layer it actually owned. Open source has always been a weapon wearing the costume of a gift. To see who's firing at whom, you have to see the AI business as a stack. At the base sit the chips, almost all of them Nvidia's. On top of that runs the cloud, the rented compute from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Above that sit the models themselves. And at the very top, the apps and the audiences, where most of us actually meet AI. 4 layers. Everyone lives on one of them. Here's the question that unlocks everything. Who on this stack makes their money selling the model itself? The answer is a surprisingly short list. For almost everyone else, the model in the middle isn't the product at all. It's a complement. And you already know what the playbook says to do with a complement. Take Meta. Its business is attention and advertising across apps that billions of people open every day. The model is not what Meta sells. It's the thing that makes what Meta sells more valuable. So Meta did the textbook move. It spent around $70 billion a year on infrastructure, built a frontier model called Llama, and then gave the weights away. Mark Zuckerberg wrote a long letter calling open source AI the path forward for the whole industry. It sounded like a gift to the world, and maybe, in part, it was. But strategically, a free Llama does something very specific. It drives the price of the entire model layer towards zero for everyone. And look where that fire is aimed. Not at the chips, not at the cloud. Straight at the middle of the stack, the one layer where a handful of rivals make their entire living charging for access to a model. Meta can afford to make models free, precisely because Meta was never selling them. For a while, this was a slow, quiet pressure. Then, in early 2025, a small Chinese lab called DeepSeek released an open model called R1 that nearly matched the best in the world trained for a fraction of the cost. And then they did the dangerous part. They priced it almost to nothing. Charging for a leading model used to cost real money, around $60 per million tokens of output at the frontier. DeepSeek's open model came in at about $2. That's not a discount. That's a price cut of more than 90% in a single release, with the model itself given away for anyone to run. The floor of the entire model layer just dropped through the basement. Wall Street read it instantly and reached the obvious conclusion. If world-class AI can be this cheap and this open, Who needs to buy mountains of expensive hardware? The selling started at the bottom of the stack with the company everyone thought had the most to lose. On January 27th, 2025, Nvidia fell 17% in a single day. Nearly $589 billion in value gone in one session. It was the largest one-day loss for any company in the history of the stock market. The logic seemed airtight. Cheaper AI means fewer chips. It was also completely wrong. Here's the part the panic missed. When models get free and cheap, people don't use less AI. They pour it into everything. And the newest reasoning models burn far more computing power per answer, not less. Cheaper models don't shrink the appetite for chips. They detonate it. The thing that looked like Nvidia's funeral was actually its fuel. Free didn't starve the chip maker. It fed it. Jensen Huang, Nvidia's chief executive, didn't flinch at the free model. He praised it. He said DeepSeek had ignited global enthusiasm and pointed out that reasoning AI consumes around 100 times more compute than the old kind. For Nvidia, the model is a compliment. The cheaper and more open it gets, the more chips the world has to buy. Nvidia loves open source. Step back up the stack, and the victims come into focus. It isn't the chip maker at the bottom who's selling more than ever. It isn't Meta at the top watching AI make its apps stickier. It's the narrow band in the middle, the companies whose entire reason to exist is charging you for access to a model. OpenAI and Anthropic are valued at close to $1 trillion each. They have brilliant people and extraordinary technology, but their core product is the one layer of the stack that three different giants are actively trying to make worthless. OpenAI is still projecting losses in the tens of billions, while the price of the thing it sells keeps falling. And this is the quiet result of the whole campaign. The value in AI didn't disappear. It drained out of the middle of the stack, the model layer, and pooled at the top and the bottom, where things are much harder to copy. The shovels at the base, the rented land in the cloud, the audiences and data at the top. The middle gets squeezed to nothing. But here's the twist, the real second-order effect. This whole strategy depends on one belief, that the model is just a complement, a thing you flood to sell something else. And that belief is starting to crack inside the very company that shouted about OpenAI the loudest. Watch what Meta did next. For years, Llama bought it leverage, cheap pressure on every rival that charged for models. But the prize kept growing until superintelligence started to look like something you would want to own outright, not give away. So Meta spent about $14 billion on a new AI chief, built a secretive lab, and began work on models reportedly codenamed Mango and Avocado that it may keep closed and sell. When a compliment starts looking like the most valuable thing on Earth, the giveaway quietly stops. The weapon only points outward until you're the one holding the prize. That U-turn tells you everything. You only commoditize a compliment while it stays a compliment. The moment Meta suspects the model might become the most valuable thing in the world, the free giveaway stops looking clever and starts looking like handing rivals a winning lottery ticket. So the door begins to close. So strip away the language of community and freedom, and here's what's left. Open in AI was rarely about being open. It was about where each company makes its money and using free to burn down the layer where its rivals live. The same free model is a gift, a weapon, and a trap, depending entirely on which floor of the stack you're standing on. Next time a company makes a powerful model free, don't just say thank you. Ask who's giving it away and what they really sell instead. Then ask whose business sits on the exact layer they just set on fire. The answer usually tells you who's playing the game and who's about to become the complement, which leaves me with the question I keep turning over, and I genuinely like your take. If models really are racing toward free, then the power moves somewhere else, down to whoever owns the compute, or up to whoever owns the audience and the data. So where would you put your money for the next 10 years? the chip at the bottom or the app at the top? Tell me in the comments. I'm second order, chasing the consequences, hiding one layer down.